those of you who have, again, been following the Brexit situation know that Northern Ireland is really, really at this moment in time in a very precarious situation. Just a couple of months ago, we had probably the most severe set of riots Northern Ireland has seen in a very, very long time. And now the DUP are essentially seem to be out making maneuvers and leaving and destroying everything that has been in place since the peace agreement has brought peace to the island, and for all intents and purposes, committing acts of vandalism just because they didn't get, well, Brexit didn't work out the way that they wanted. And there's no one to blame for them on that than the actual Brexiteers themselves. The DUP should be blaming the Brexiteers. They should be blaming Boris Johnson. They should be blaming Nigel Farage. Surprisingly, not Theresa May, because her deal wouldn't have resulted in this. But again, that's another story. They should have indeed backed Theresa May's deal. That would have left them in a far, far better position than they are now. And this is the result of where we are now. The DUP are actively engaging in acts of, well, political vandalism that are essentially, well, as the article puts it, as you can see, is going to leave Northern Ireland with a very difficult future. All because they didn't get their way. This is the political version of throwing your toys out of the pram. They are actively engaged in that at the moment. But before we get into this article again, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, as well as one donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do support the channel. So this comes from The Guardian. The title is Unionists Brexit Politicking Has Ensured That Northern Ireland Has No Future. Unionism saw in Brexit an opportunity to wreck the Good Friday Agreement and get back a hard border. Instead, as in any protest of the survival of Northern, as in any prospect of survival of the Northern Ireland, it has been demolished. Sir Geoffrey Donaldson admitted in an interview at the weekend that if Sinn Féin took the First Minister's post at Stormont, it would be a problem for unionists. The latest opinion poll has shown that Sinn Féin is poised to be the country's largest party by at least 25%, with the DUP plummeting by down to just 13%, and now surpassed on the unionist side by the Ulster Unionist Party, the UUP, and the Traditional Unionist Voice, the TUV. Next year's census will probably show that the Catholic community is now larger than the Protestant one. An election is already due for the spring of 2022. And in this context is which we must view Donaldson's threat to pull the executive and his decision to stop cooperating with the Irish government in cross-border bodies. The protocol is a fig leaf, one plucked from a tree the DUP and Boris Johnson planted. And as you can see already, they are really committing an act of unquestionable vandalism here that is going to have far, far-reaching consequences to come. So the Reverend Ian Paisley used to refer to Martin McGuinness as my deputy. When the DUP leader was the First Minister and Sinn Féin was the Deputy First Minister, McGuinness indulged the old man. Both roles are equal and represent the joint leadership of Northern Ireland Executive. But unionism, having had marginally the largest party electorally, had always held the First Ministry and clings to the vestiges of delusion of dominance, gossiping over the concept of power sharing in a mandatory coalition that was at the heart of the Good Friday Agreement. The TUV has only won the envolée at Stormont, but Jin Allister speaks forcefully for the past into which much of the unionism very longs to return. In the aforementioned poll, the party hit at least 14%, leapfrogging the DUP. He said that any unionist leader who serves under Sinn Féin First Minister would be a stooge. Donaldson chose to make what was billed as a very landmark speech on the eve of a visit to Northern Ireland last week by the European Commission's Vice President Markus Fulak. And according to the former DUP leader, Peter Robinson, the speech would, quote, define the position of unionism for decades to come and with the future of the union. On becoming leader in June, Donaldson was meant to be the progressive face of the DUP, who would turn the party around to face forwards. But having called the protocol the most serious constitutional crisis in Northern Ireland since our formation a century ago, he has offered no ideas as to how to save his beloved country, other than just threatening to collapse its government. He has implied his grand gesture would bring about an election. In reality, that is the prerogative of the Secretary of State, who might well just not bother. What Donaldson wants of the EU and the British government is unclear. In his speech, he declared kicking the can down the road will merely tighten the knot. As political statements go, it's not far off. An owl sack of troubles an owl in a sack troubles no man. Robinson is now the party's backroom statesman and wrote garishly that the union must unite against the devilish ploy that will, unless it is removed, spread like a cancer throughout the blood and into the bones and organs of the union. But while Donaldson said attempts to try and limit the impact of the protocol would fail, and that his party would not follow those who said it was here to stay, a dig at the new UUP leader, Doug Beattie, who suggested that the cross-border body might help. He did not adopt the full ditch the protocol position, and that is the fundamentalist unions also have done as well. He did, however, to his shame, play the old Paisley card of implying that his voice was the voice of reason, holding back a tide of rage. Paisley Sr. used to warn his opponents that they would reap a very bitter harvest. Loyalist gangs would demonstrate what they believed to be meant by going out and killing Catholics. Donaldson referred to the street disorder last spring that added to what, while it had subsided, that it would be an act of folly to believe that the anger has reduced or even danger has passed. This government includes this notion throughout and knows it to be very spurious. Those disturbances in unionist working class area were relatively minor, largely orchestrated by a thuggish element of widely denounced within the unionist community. But the thugs have not given up. The sectarian grift is becoming scrawled on walls, and there are reports of Catholics being intimidated out of traditional Protestant areas. Sovak will be the judge for himself of the strength of the Northern Ireland Protocol. When it was announced that he was to meet with academics, business and community leaders at Queen's University Belfast, loyalists called on protesters to gather at the gates. Sovak said the commission would do anything possible to minimize the disruption brought about by the protocol, which was, he reasoned, not the problem. On the contrary, he said, it is the solution we have. While a majority in Northern Ireland voted to remain in the EU, many of those in the room are now attempting and trying to adapt to the realities of Brexit. Turning to the advantage to the very unique access that the protocol gives the country to both the EU and UK markets. The anti-protocol then marched up and down outside. There were about 25 of them. Paisley Sr. got about tens of thousands of people to appear outside the Anglo-Irish Agreement back in 1985, and it went ahead anyway. In his speech, Donaldson said churlishly that to unionists it would appear that there are those in the EU who only want to be alive to the nationalist concerns. The EU has very wisely declined to indulge unionism's desire to play the victim, instead turning the blind eye to the government's precedent unilateral abuse of the trading rules it agreed to when it signed up to the protocol. A better strategist than Donaldson could have claimed this as a victory. This situation very much suits the British government. The Prime Minister can point to the DUP in the same way that Donaldson points to the Loyalist paramilitaries. Katie Ho, who recently said that Northern Ireland had been sacrificed to get Brexit, was reportedly photographed at the weekend speaking at the TUV barbecue. She's a very close friend of Ian Paisley Jr., MP, who then backed the very much fundamentalist Edwin Poots during his very brief tenure as leader. The DUP is balking at the potential of a First Minister coming from what used to be better known as the other sort, and has now retreated back into sectarianism. The fragility of its commitment to power sharing is now being exposed, and the Irish government is in deference to unionist sensitivities and is alarmed itself by the rise of Sinn Féin in the Republic. It is keeping very much its political distance from talk of a border poll, but soon that will be inevitable. There will be no decades to come for the Union. Donaldson said in his speech he would not play the blame game. No wonder. Yeah, of course, this is eventually going to happen. I think there's going to be border poll easily within the next decade. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens after the next vote, because it's very likely that Sinn Féin is going to win power in Northern Ireland. Very likely they will win power in Ireland, and it's very likely they will then call for a border poll. And ultimately, they will potentially win that border poll, because I think a lot of people have given up on the idea of being part of the UK in Northern Ireland now. They don't see it as an attractive opportunity. Like I say, the vast majority of people in Northern Ireland voted to remain in the European Union. And if they get that chance to do so, then they will. And remember, Northern Ireland uniting with Ireland will be a massive benefit to Ireland. Like I say, they'll not only get another city, they'll also get another very big tax base, they'll get new industries, all sorts of stuff added to Ireland. So it's going to be a massive economical benefit when Ireland actually, reunites. And there will be nothing that Britain can do to stop it. So eventually that is going to go the way, and it will be because of the way that Boris Johnson has behaved and the way that his own protocol that he put in place and negotiated along with Frost has happened. Like I say, they've got no one else to blame in this fact but themselves. They were the ones that signed it. They were the ones that made it. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And, of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And, as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all